So this is the top few books I recommend most of you guys devour in some form or another, whether it's you buy the physical book and read it with a highlighter and put notes all over it, or you buy the audio version from Audible or Amazon or something like that. First and foremost, 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. He's just released a expanded and updated version with a bunch of case studies, new links to tools online, all that sort of stuff. It's a fantastic book for getting your head around the ability to outsource a lot of things through virtual assistants in India and the Philippines and stuff like that. I've implemented a lot of the strategies in Tim's book, and it's made a huge difference to my life. Next, we have Getting Things Done, which is another very practical guide to actually ensuring you can get more done in your day. David Allen is a fantastic theorist, I guess, and also practitioner in that he actually gives you some really easy to follow step-by-step rules of getting things done and working through your to-do lists and all that sort of stuff. So it's a very highly recommended book, and I'd actually suggest buying the book version of this as well as the audio. There's some tables and some guides and some flow charts and stuff in the actual book that you don't actually get in the audio, so I'd suggest grabbing both copies. Next is a book that I love and I've listened to a couple of times. It's Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. It's not a business book by any standard. It's basically a story of a running journalist who tried to, I guess, get fitter and be able to put more distance into his runs, and started going into Mexico and came across a tribe of Indians who run marathons a day, bare feet and all that sort of stuff. And it's just a really interesting book about the body and how we're meant to run and how we're meant to move and all that sort of stuff. So it's very inspirational for those of you who are trying to get fit. I highly recommend this one. Free by Chris Anderson, one of the newer books on this list. It's just a really, as it says, practical guide about like how the business world's changing, and free is becoming very, very important in any sort of business model. So it's a really good idea generation book. Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. For that matter, anything from Malcolm Gladwell is definitely worth a read. Outliers is basically a book or a report, if you want, on the success of people in the world and what the successful actually do and how they got there. And fundamentally, it comes down to doing at least 10,000 hours or something before you become successful. There's some amazing stories in there about the Beatles and a few other musicians and other successful people of how they actually got to where they were. And it's sort of trying to say that you're not born successful, you actually have to work at it and have to do 10,000 hours of something before you can become a master of it. Really cool book. I guess the Bible for most entrepreneurs and investors, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. He basically changed the way people thought about their house and assets and investing, and it's a must read for everybody, let alone business people. A book that a lot of people probably wouldn't know about called Rules for Revolutionaries. It's Guy Kawasaki's second book, I believe. It's what I believe is probably his best book. His more recent ones have been great and better sellers, but I think this is a much more enjoyable read than anything else. It's quite funny and it's very informative as well. Influence by Robert Cialdini, again an absolute must read for anybody, whether you're in business or not. It talks about the influence factors and the persuasion factors and how us as human beings can be influenced and how you can actually influence other people and how it all works. So very, very interesting read, and it's a great sort of reference point for anything you're doing in a marketing world to try and actually ensure you have all the influence factors in a marketing campaign. Again, not a business book, but a book about society, really. The Game by Neil Strauss, Penetrating the Secret Society of Pickup Artists. For those who don't know about this, Neil was a writer for Rolling Stone and the New York Times, mostly in the music scene. Really geeky, really nerdy, and he says this himself. And then basically came across a book online, or a little subculture online, about the science and the art of pickup. And he sort of got very much into that world and went through the whole process of transforming himself from someone who was really shy and awkward to someone who has a lot of self-confidence and knows the social interaction rules, I guess you call them. So obviously there's a glossy honey of this of being, pickup artists and all that sort of stuff. But if you actually read it and sort of put that aside for a moment, actually look at just the techniques and the tips and the suggestions and the story he goes through and the path he goes through, it's really interesting to see how society actually interacts, because it's more of a social science book than anything else, in my personal opinion. Another book that I reckon most people would have never heard of is by a friend of mine called Scott Ginsberg, a US guy, who actually has worn a name tag, as you can see there in the cover of his book, with his name, "Hi, my name is Scott," on it, for about 5 years now, every single day. He even has that name tag tattooed on his chest. Again, it started off as a bit of a social experiment, and it's now just blown into a huge speaking career for him. I think he's written 5 books now. This is by far the best one, in my opinion. Make a name for yourself, and it's just talking about how to actually go about your life to ensure you are remembered and you make an impact. Very, very good book. Again, the Bible, over 15 million copies sold. How to Win Friends and Influence People. I don't think I have to say much about this. I'm sure you've all heard it at some point in your lives, and I hope you've read it or listened to it. A book that, again, a lot of people probably wouldn't know is a book called Triggers by a guy by the name of Joe Sugarman. Now, Joe Sugarman was the man responsible for the blue blockers infomercials back in the 80s and 90s in the US, and I think they sold $1 billion worth of sunglasses through the infomercial that he created. Just amazing. And this is a similar book to Influence, in that it's just all about the 30 sales tools that you can use to control the mind of your prospect to motivate, influence, and persuade. It's a lot less scientific than Robert Cialdini's book, because Cialdini is actually a university lecturer. Joe Sugarman's an on-the-ground entrepreneur. And it sort of says, this is the tactic, this is how I've used it. This is the tactic, this is how I've used it. Very, very good book. Another one is Scientific Advertising by Claude Hopkins. This is a book from the 1920s or 1930s, and it's pretty much the originator of the marketing genre of books. I'd say that pretty much every other marketing book ever written has something that would have been in this Claude Hopkins book. It was an amazing book, very, very easy to read. He's written a couple of books, My Life in Advertising and Scientific Advertising. They're out of print now, but you can sort of get ebook versions and various other versions online. So this has to be a must read for everybody. It'll show you the origins of marketing, basically. And finally, I think it would be very remiss of me not to mention my own book, How to Turn Your $1 Million Idea into a Reality. I think it's a great book, obviously. We're in the process of getting the audio version finished, so that'll be out in a couple of months, which is very exciting. So I'll let you guys know all about that once that's released. Other than that, hope you've enjoyed this quick video. Please put some comments in the blog below or on the YouTube video, wherever you are watching this, telling me what other books that you recommend and what you've read and what have changed your life, because I'd love to do another couple of videos in this sort of series, I guess, of other books that I'd suggest you read and look into and why. So please give me your comments, your feedback on these books or other books. Thanks, guys.